The year was 2001. This is what fashion looked like. This is what music was. So was this. These were the top 10 movies of the year. This was happiness. This was tragedy. And this was a Tom Cruise movie, Vanilla Sky, a movie ahead of its time. It's the most bonkers film of Tom Cruise's career, and you probably forgot about it. I guess people in 2001 weren't ready for it, but their kids are gonna love it. Now sit back, relax, grab a round of tequilas, and let's dive into the lucid nightmare of Vanilla Sky. Vanilla Sky's director, Cameron Crowe, is a big music head. At the age of 16, he became a journalist for Rolling Stone magazine. If you flash to 1996 when Jerry Maguire starring Tom Cruise came out, you'll notice how important music really is to him. It's almost wall to wall in that film. A while back I was watching Jerry Maguire with my wife while visiting my parents, and from upstairs they asked, "Are you watching a musical?" And we simply replied, "Nope, it's Jerry Maguire." As an indie filmmaker, I'm truly envious of movies that have a big enough budget that they can put whatever songs they want in it. Trust me, it is not cheap. In 2000, Crowe made a movie loosely based on his teenage years called Almost Famous, about a young man who gets the chance to interview an up-and-coming rock band in the 70s. He had so much fun making the movie with his cast and crew that when it came to an end, he felt like he wanted to keep the band together, so to speak. Cut to Tom Cruise and producing partner Paula Wagner as they watched the film Abre los Ojos at Sundance in 1998. The film gripped Tom Cruise so hard that he immediately tracked down the rights to do a remake. They decided that they wanted to treat the remake like a cover song. You know, a band likes a song so much that they decide to do their own version of it, while still keeping the same chord structure that made the original so great. Cameron Crowe approaches movies more like a musician than a filmmaker. And I think that's what makes his version of Abre los Ojos so compelling. Dreams often have a musical quality to them. It's more about the emotion than the linear storytelling, if you get what I'm saying. And if you don't, well, first let's talk about the original movie. In 2023, we live in a time where franchises are rebooted only 3 years after its last film. I'm looking at you, Spider-Man. Back in 2001, though, that wasn't very common. Abre los Ojos debuted overseas in 1997. 4 years later, you had Vanilla Sky. Talk about a fast turnaround, you know? Director Alejandro Amenabar crafted a wildly original film about a rich playboy named Caesar who falls in love with a woman named Sophia. Unfortunately, his jealous lover, Nuria, can't come to terms with his rejection, so she drives him off a bridge and into a dark journey of horror and self-awakening. Now that's where I'm going to leave you if you've never seen this film or Vanilla Sky before. Here's Cameron Diaz dancing with a waiter. Okay, so for the rest of us, it turns out that Caesar has been cryogenically frozen for 150 years, and while waiting to be resuscitated, he's been having a lucid dream that he paid a company called Life Extension good money to create for him. The mood of this film is much more foreboding than it is in the remake. Also, the fact that this was an original story as opposed to a remake instantly gives it more street cred over Vanilla Sky. However, having seen Vanilla Sky before Abre los Ojos, I have to say, and it's just my opinion, Vanilla Sky actually improves upon the original in many ways. It's just like Cameron Crowe says. His band loved the original song so much that they decided to cover it, and they covered it well. Abre los Ojos cost the US dollar equivalent of $2.3 million to make. Vanilla Sky had a whopping budget of $68 million. So yeah, right there, they had an advantage. But in defense of Vanilla Sky, the money does give us a slicker film. It was also sort of a ballsy move for Tom Cruise and Cameron Crowe to make such an edgy and weird movie at that point in their careers. In 2000, Tom Cruise made the biggest movie of his career up to that point, Mission Impossible 2. He was the biggest star in the world. One thing you might not remember about Cruise at that point in time, though, was that he was also a great actor who was doing some very experimental work at the time. I know nowadays he's more of an action hero, but back then, he was really starting to explore the weirder side of Hollywood movies. There is a trilogy of films from that period that demonstrate this exploration. Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, Magnolia, and Vanilla Sky. In these films, the blockbuster potential was the last thing considered. It was more about the experience. For Eyes Wide Shut, it was the chance to work with a Hollywood legend alongside his then-wife Nicole Kidman. The role of Bill Harford was somewhat subdued, but the behind-the-scenes production of it all was super strange and mythical. I mean, that's a whole other video, but basically, it was very Kubrickian. What do I mean by that? Well, for instance, there was the eccentric practice of shooting a crap ton of takes, which the legendary director was famous for. We're talking 90 takes of crews walking through a door over and over until Kubrick was satisfied. What was he looking for in such a simple shot? I'm no genius, so don't ask me. Don't forget about the long-ass filming schedule either. The movie set the record for longest film shoot. It took 400 days to complete. Only Kubrick could get two of the world's biggest stars to commit that much time to an anti-blockbuster like Eyes Wide Shut. It was touted as a very racy and scandalous film at the time, but it's kind of tame compared to Vanilla Sky if you think about it. But yeah, that was a risky experience that Tom Cruise just couldn't resist. Now, Magnolia was such an electric, weird, and funny movie for Tom to take on as well. And he wasn't even the star. The movie was an ensemble film. But Frank T.J. Mackey was such a hyper, womanizing, woman-hating, motivational douchebag with daddy issues that you just couldn't look away. No one had ever seen Cruise like that before, and it was amazing to behold. He was nominated for an Oscar but didn't win. I think he should have. The part where he breaks down beside his dying father is a powerful scene. So yeah, he played an arrogant womanizer and a man plagued by a mysterious sexual cult with a dreamlike atmosphere before, but when you combine those two movies into one narrative, you sort of get Vanilla Sky. In Vanilla Sky, Cruise plays David Ames, a rich playboy who inherited the keys to the kingdom of his father's publishing empire. He can have any woman he wants, and he regularly exercises this notion. He treats women carelessly, as his F-buddy Juliana finds out firsthand. But when David's best friend Brian brings over a date named Sophia, he falls head over heels in love. In just one night, she makes him want to be a better man. And they didn't even have sex together. Cruise and Cruise had great chemistry, and it really feels like they were falling in love in real life, which they actually were. And they ended up dating for 3 years after the movie. Anyway, unfortunately, the next morning, he makes a dire mistake and takes the ride of his life. This scene had some harsh words that you would probably never hear in a movie these days.
I swallowed your gum, David. That means something. Yeah. It means it's going to be in your GI tract for 7 years. Semen.
From there, it turns into a psychological sci-fi film that rips away everything it gave you in the first half of its runtime. Critics were not nice to this movie when it came out. But come on, what is a movie for if not to make you feel things? The moment that Juliana drives David away from his budding romance and off of a bridge, you just feel like the movie you were promised has been kidnapped and murdered. And that's an interesting thing for a movie to do. It was pretty gutsy. Huge credit to Aubrey Los Ojos for dreaming it up in the first place, and huge credit to Vanilla Sky for notching it up like 10 levels. You feel this utter sympathy for David as he loses everything he used to have in the form of charm and good looks. He locks himself away but still pines for Sophia, so one day he conjures up the courage to ask her out on a date. And she is a little freaked out by his appearance, let's be honest. They go to a nightclub where David shows up with a freaky prosthetic face, and things don't end well for him. He ends up getting drunk, alienating his friends, and passing out on the street. The next day, he wakes up to a Vanilla Sky and a more caring and loving version of Sophia. All the while, our timeline is getting spliced with a jail cell where David is getting interrogated by the personable Dr. McCabe. The mystery of whether he murdered Sophia unfolds throughout, but we eventually find out that David didn't murder anyone but himself. You see, after the night at the club, David got so depressed and was in so much pain that he couldn't go on anymore. He contacts a company called Life Extension and signs up for their most expensive service, the Lucid Dream. After he dies, they take his body and freeze him cryogenically until a date where the technology has advanced enough to fix his face and give him the life that the present day can't offer him. Meanwhile, he's free to live a dreamlike existence that feels like a pleasant music video. Of course, something goes wrong, and his subconscious makes him experience a nightmare instead. He meets a technician that explains his predicament and gives him the choice to keep on dreaming with the glitch now fixed, or to wake up 150 years after he went into his cryogenic state. David chooses to wake up. So to do this, he jumps off the highest building in his version of New York, and on the way down, his life flashes before his eyes. This part is so eerie, not only because that might be what happens at death, but also because in a world where everything is about pop culture and what we consume on TV and our phones, etc., I'd hate to imagine that what flashes before our eyes during death are the endless TV shows and pop culture we consumed when we were alive. Ugh. Anyway, a pretty straightforward ending, right? Well, no, of course not. First of all, how the heck did they get him to lucid dream? After being dead! I thought when you were dead, that kind of ruined the possibility of working with your brainwaves. Don't those die too? Help me out in the comment section if you know, but that's such a weird point of contention for me. Oh yeah, and speaking of cryopreservation, did you know there's a legend that Walt Disney wanted to be cryogenically frozen? Rumor has it that after his death, he was frozen and stored beneath Sleeping Beauty's castle at Disneyland. I mean, in reality, he was actually cremated and buried in Glendale, California. You see, in 1966, cryonics weren't very far along. But a few weeks after Walt's death, the Cryonics Society of California completed its first human cryopreservation. Could it be that the legend was true and Disney was actually cryopreserved? And maybe his PR team just didn't want the public to find out because it would be creepy? I have no idea. I wouldn't rule anything out in this crazy world of ours, though. Anyway, on the first viewings of Vanilla Sky, it can be a lot to take in. That's why the more you watch it, the clearer it becomes. The movie's ending is more about what we, the viewers, make of it. On Cameron Crowe's personal website, uncool.com, he discusses some of the theories that he's received from fans. 1. The movie is just as it's explained. David commits suicide, he's frozen, and the splice occurs. The sound you hear at the end is David awakening in the future. 2. Everything up to the car wreck was real, and the rest of the entire film was all in David's head as he lies in a coma until the end when he wakes up. 3. The entire film is a dream as David struggles with his vanity, his sexual past, his ideal woman, etc. The only real scene in the entire film would be the last as he wakes up. 4. The movie is writer Brian Shelby's fictional story about his friend David Ames. A story of the sour and the sweet. He plays the unsung hero to the playboy. That one's pretty interesting. I love all of these takes. It's also a testament to how much this movie makes its audience think. From the very beginning of the movie, Crowe puts his huge budget to good use by having David Ames run along a deserted Times Square. And guess what? No CGI. Just a budget big enough to clear a busy New York street for a remarkable opening shot. The movie was filmed in just 6 weeks. That's so fast, especially when you take into consideration a film like Eyes Wide Shut with its 400-day shoot. Crowe enlisted a ton of crew members and actors from Almost Famous to jump on board this picture. Jason Lee and Noah Taylor came fresh off of their Almost Famous roles. John Toll returned as cinematographer. Crowe's then wife and Heart band member, Nancy Wilson, also returned as a composer for Vanilla Sky. Heart had huge hits in the 70s and 80s like Barracuda, Crazy on You, These Dreams, and What About Love. She had worked with Crowe on Say Anything, Jerry Maguire, Almost Famous, and now Vanilla Sky. Her last film with him before their divorce was Elizabethtown. She's a big part of the DNA of those films, and it's a shame that they didn't stay together, but I guess the sweet is never as sweet without the sour. A very 2001 thing I love to do is to go deeper into my favorite films by experiencing a dead art, watching DVD special features. The Vanilla Sky DVD is such a fantastic vessel for this film. It includes the documentary Prelude to a Dream, which is about the overall approach and feel that the crew had while making the film. Hitting It Hard is another mini-doc about the arduous but fun journey of promoting the film all over the world. Oh, and guess what? I just found out yesterday that there's a hidden feature on the DVD. So when you go to the photo gallery page and you highlight David's mask and click on it, you gain access to the film's gag reel. My mind was blown. You know, I've had the DVD for over a decade and I never knew that, so I was really happy to find this out. What a cool little treat. The DVD audio commentary given by Cameron Crowe and Nancy Wilson is also unique. Nancy plays guitar live while Cameron waxes poetic about the making of the film. They also, during the club scene, call Tom Cruise and he actually picks up the phone and they discuss what they were going through while filming that scene. This also speaks volumes about Tom Cruise as a person. The fact that he's so available to people and so willing to contribute to something as small as an audio commentary, that's just awesome. It's one of the best audio commentaries I've ever heard. I learned that Catherine Hardwicke, the director of the first Twilight film, was the set decorator on this movie. Crazy how people get their starts, huh? Cameron and Nancy's twin sons can also be heard on the commentary as they come in and interrupt their parents. I love it. It reminds me of something my son would do, and it just humanizes the whole experience. I found out that Cameron Crowe would play music on a speaker before and even during takes while filming. In fact, actor Timothy Spall was taken aback by this at first, but eventually he got into it. This part where Tom is doing a strange dance but there's no music, well, on set, the song Over the Hills and Far Away by Led Zeppelin was actually playing. Also, Cameron Diaz, who was a big fan of Nancy Wilson's band Heart, got to record with her idol in a studio. It was for the scene where Juliana plays her demo CD for David in the car. Nancy Wilson did the backing vocals, but Diaz sang the lead. She was terrified and honored at the same time. As you see in the movie, Spielberg made a cameo, and that's because he was visiting Tom Cruise to talk about their next movie, Minority Report. And Cameron Crowe told him to get in there for the party scene. Crew members were like, "You said get in there to Steven Spielberg?" And he was like, "Yeah, why not?" Cameron Crowe would later make his own cameo in Minority Report during this scene. Oh yeah, this lady doing a testimonial on a TV screen at LE is Cameron Crowe's mom. This is Tom Cruise's cousin, William Mapother. The movie came out on December 14th, 2001, and it surprisingly grossed $203 million at the worldwide box office, something that just wouldn't happen in today's climate. This movie would probably be a straight-to-Netflix affair. But back then, Tom Cruise could put butts in seats, even if it was a movie as weird and ethereal as Vanilla Sky. Critics didn't like it, audiences were confused, but the movie has since gained a cult following. It's a movie that washes over you and never lets go. Tom Cruise never made another film like it. He's mostly concentrated on action films like Maverick and the Mission Impossible movies. Cameron Diaz has all but retired from Hollywood since 2014. I mean, she's going to be in a movie called Back in Action soon, but mostly she's retired. The same goes for Cameron Crowe, who hasn't directed a feature film since his movie Aloha in 2015. Penelope Cruz, however, has been a constant presence in film and TV and in a wide variety of roles. Okay, look, I could talk about Vanilla Sky all day, but then I wouldn't get any other videos done, so instead, I'll leave you with something trippy to think about. What if Vanilla Sky is really a sequel to Abre los Ojos? I mean, think about it. Caesar has been dreaming for 150 years. That's a long time to have such a short dream. What if at the end of Abre los Ojos, when he jumps off of the building, he doesn't wake up? He just keeps repeating his dream over and over again. And over time, he starts to forget what he looks like, so he morphs into the persona of David Ames. He's stuck in a loop where eventually everyone in his past looks different because that's what time does. But Sophia never changes because she's the one true love of his life. And in Vanilla Sky's ending, he finally wakes up in the future. Oh, trippy. Hey guys, I'm Scotty Dunn. Thanks for hanging out. If you enjoyed this video, take a look at these. See you next time.